Hello and welcome back to art class. Today we are going to work with something on our picture called monochromatic. Monochromatic is a kind of color scheme that uses only basically one color for the entire picture. So a picture is made completely out of red, or orange, or green, or whatever. But they pick the one color and then they do the light versions and the dark versions of the picture. It's kind of like a black and white photo, if you've ever seen one of those, but only instead of using black and white, you're using the light versions and dark versions of one color. Okay? And in order to make a monochromatic, you're picking your color, and in order to make a color darker, you might have more black, or you might make it more, to make it lighter, you might add more white, or you could add a little bit of gray to make it kind of a middle of the road color. There are some actual famous artists that really use monochromatic. It wasn't the only way they painted or drew or colored. One of the most famous that I know of is Georgia O'Keeffe. Georgia O'Keeffe, as you can see here in this first picture, is she loved to do flowers. She did a whole series on close-ups. I mean, really, really close. Like you were taking a camera and getting right into the flower to get really close to it to do these paintings. And she would use whatever color that flower happened to be. If the flower happened to be all one color, then that's really what she'd do. And she'd make the lights and darks, as you can see here in this picture. Another one that she did it was called Lake George. This is a landscape. And you know, if it's really misty outside, it can kind of mute the colors into one thing or one shade. And you can see the reflection here. She was, again, known for this series of landscapes. Not every landscape was just monochromatic, but this is an example of one that she did do. Okay. Another famous example would be Vincent van Gogh and his sunflower series. As you can see here, it's mostly yellow and yellow orangish. Okay. Another one you would be familiar with, also by Vincent van Gogh, is Starry Night. Most of this picture has blues in it. Okay. You can see that it's got a very blue look to it all over. And then the last one I want to really show you with, because this one actually is in Chicago, is The Old Guitarist by Pablo Picasso. Okay? And with Pablo Picasso, he was usually known for his Cubism style, but at one point in his career, he decided to do some monochromatic pictures, some with pinks and reds, some with blues. Now, one thing you'll notice in all of these pictures is that they're not true with just one color. There's usually a hint of another color mixed in with them, because it is kind of hard to make a really good picture with just one color all the time. Now, it can be done, but as you saw with pretty much all of them, there's a hint of another color mixed in here and there, and that kind of adds a little bit of interest and contrast just to make sure the picture is interesting to look at. What we are going to do is we're going to create our own monochromatic picture, and we're going to be picking basically one color. And I have a couple things to go over before we start the actual drawing. Let's talk about the material we're going to use. Now, for our picture, we are going to be using crayons, okay? Because everybody has those at home. Originally, if you were here at school, I might do this with paint. So if you have paint at home, you might want to watch this video and next week's video, and then you can figure out how to switch it over to being paint, because I'm going to discuss it only as crayon in this video, but it is possible to do this as a painted project. Okay, so how do we do this with crayon? Well, you're going to need to kind of figure out what color do you want. Now, I have divided out, I have a regular box of 24 crayons here that Crayola uses. And what I did was I pulled out what colors would work the best for a monochromatic picture in this box. You're going to need 3 of the same color. You need a light version of the color, you need the regular version of the color, and you need a darker version of the color. Okay? So as you can see here, I have them nice in rows. I have a red. Red is the first one. Light version of red is pink. Okay, some of you may not have known that, but the light version of red is pink. Then we have what is actually, Crayola calls this violet red. Violet red is the second color. And then the last color is red. Those three would be in order like that. That's one choice you could have. Another choice you could have is yellow orange, regular orange, and then red orange. Those have a nice light, medium, dark there. Another choice is going to be your green. I have green, yellow, yellow, green, and green. And you know, when you look at your box, you'll see that it kind of goes from light to dark. Blue is also an option. There are lots of blues in boxes of crayons. If you have the Crayola box, recently they made a change inside the box on the kinds of blues, so you'd have to make the adjustment on it. Usually, you could go with blue-green as kind of your light blue. You could go with cerulean blue as your next blue. It just says cerulean, but it's just blue. And then your darker blue would be just blue. The new boxes, I think, have something called Bluetiful. That is a bit darker, so that could be a third or even a fourth color. All right, and the last set that I found in most boxes that you can do is a violet. In order to do that one, you would need the indigo, which is kind of a blue-purple color, blue violet itself, the actual blue violet, and then you would need violet itself as well. Unfortunately, the way the crayons are, you can't really use yellow. Yellow is not an option because they don't give you enough choices to do that. You will also need a black and a white. Today, our focus will need to be is to choose the color, not necessarily have the colors, but choose which one of the 5 you want to do, and then we're going to do the drawing. Once we get the drawing done, we'll go on to the next step. Okay? So let's deal with the drawing. Okay, so our first project is our drawing is going to be an underwater picture. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is I need to draw some levels. So I want to have shallow water and a little bit deeper water so that it's a little bit lighter here and a little bit darker here. How am I going to do that? Well, you're going to need a few items. Today you're going to need your paper, you're going to need a pencil, you need an eraser, you're going to want a cup for the circle stencil, and you're probably going to want your set of crayons just in case we get that far to start the coloring. We won't finish the coloring, but we will get started, I think. Okay, next, let's get drawing. You're going to want to probably turn your paper sideways or up and down like this. And let me move my crayons back here because they're kind of in the way. And I'm going to use my hand as a spacer to kind of figure out lines. So I'm going to have my 4 fingers like this, and I need to make a mark. 4 fingers from the top. So now I got my mark, and this is going to be my shallow water and then my deep water underneath it. So I'm going to draw a line. And what's nice is it doesn't need to be perfectly straight. In fact, it would probably look better if it had slight hill to it, one slight hill to it. It makes the water look like it's flowing a little bit more. Then I'm going to use my hand again as a spacer and make a mark. And this down here, I'm going to do the same kind of line. Again, it's a slight wave. It's not crazy wavy. It's just got a slight wave to it. This is actually going to be the bottom of the water. It could be the bottom of the lake, bottom of the ocean. Your call on what you're thinking there. Next, I want to use the circle stencil. And you're going to, we don't want to be perfectly middle. We want to be a little bit off to the side. And you can be up, down. I like it to be, I like it to overlap the ground personally. It's a kind of a personal preference. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to actually trace like that. And I'm going to erase the part of the ground that's inside the circle, because I'm going to turn this thing into a fish. Okay, so now I have part of the fish. I need a tail, so I'm going to do basically what looks like a big triangle. Notice though that the point of the triangle actually would go into the body, so I didn't actually draw the whole triangle there. And I need to erase 2 parts over here. I need to erase this part of the circle, because we want it to look like one big shape, and I need to erase the part of the ground that's hidden in there. All right, so now I kind of have a goldfish type look. I need to give it a mouth. Okay. And I need to give it an eye. I do know that they have gills, but that line we're gonna save till later simply because it won't show up or get colored over if we put it in now, so we'll just do it towards the end. Okay, so now we have our basic goldfish. Now we're just looking for the basic shape. Next, I want to put a plant in there so that, you know, it's got some way of putting oxygen in the water. And this one is going to be a very simple plant. It's going to be basically kind of like a very tall, skinny S. So I'm going to start here at the top. And if you look at it, it looks like a very tall, skinny S right there. And then I'm going to make a second one starting at the top here, right at the corner, and it's going to do the same thing. So it looks kind of like seaweed. And then I'm going to put this line so it looks like it's growing into the ground. And then I go in and erase so that it looks like a solid object. Okay, I'm going to make a smaller version. Again, it's a tall, skinny S. I gotta make sure it goes into the ground because we don't want it stopping on that line. It'll look weird. And then put a line underneath it that goes a little bit past. Notice mine goes a little bit past, so it looks like there's some ground around it. Okay, so now we have some seaweed, some plants there, and then we're gonna need some bubbles. And bubbles are circles. So we're gonna put some bigger circles, and then I want to put a couple of smaller circles kind of where the fish is, so it looks like the bubbles are coming from the fish. Okay. All right, next, what I'm going to do is we're going to get our first layer of color on in there, and I think that's a good place to stop simply because I've had to talk a lot for this and for this project. So let's get one layer on. That way we can figure out what color we're going to do. So I've chosen green for my project. So I'm going to have my 3 greens, and then I'm going to have the black and white handy. Today I'm only needing the lightest green for this part of the project. Now at the top, because it's supposed to be the shallow water, it should be lighter. So I'm going to take my green, my really light green. In fact, this one is actually called green yellow. It's the lightest one I got. And I'm going to outline everything in the top layer. Then, now that I got everything outlined, I'm going to go in and I'm going to just color. And it's best to color side to side for this project instead of up and down, just because the water is flowing this way or that way. It usually does not flow up and down in a lake or a river or an ocean. Okay, I think that's a good place to stop because it's going to take you a little while to do that neatly. Just go in, make sure you get all your little white spaces and do some touch-ups. We will deal with the rest of the picture because there is some color mixing that has to happen later on. So I need you to get through the drawing and then get your first layer of color. Remember, it is the lightest version of your color. So if you were working the reds, your lightest would be the pink. If you're working the oranges, the lightest version would be this yellow-orange. If you were working the blues, your lightest version would be probably the blue-green. And if you're working the purples, then your lightest version would be the indigo, most likely. If you have a different brand, you may want to test them on the back just to be sure that you're working lightest to darkest on certain things. Okay? Please upload a photo of this to Seesaw once you have it all drawn and this first layer colored, and we will see each other next week to finish this up.